there's no way like I would ever, if I ever found out my son was basically dealing with a woman like me, I would be heartbroken.
Hey angels, make sure to head over to my website, ashachristina.com, to download my free guide on idolatry. I promise it's really going to bless you. If you are interested in preventing delay in your life and you want to get rid of certain idols, this is the guide for you. Click the link in the description box below. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Happy Wednesday. How is everyone feeling? I am very excited for this episode because I got my girl Vanity here. Okay, Vanity and I actually met in Dallas. Literally, just happenstance. I was in Dallas doing a speaking engagement for my friend Sarah Aloba, and Vanity had come up to me and complimented me. Her energy was just so beautiful and genuine. We started following each other on social media. Vanity, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here and I'm super excited to talk to you. It feels like just yesterday we did meet in person. I have had the pleasure of listening to you in real life. You were the first speaker I went to and was drawn to because I absolutely loved your presence on stage. And I even told you I loved seeing you and your parents just like in the flesh in real time, seeing that love was amazing. The way your parents were cheering you on, the way they were recording you. I was just so I'm extremely happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, like fun fact, guys, like my parents literally go with me when I travel, like literally everywhere, and I'm 30, and my parents still go with me places. Like it's just how, it's how I am, you know. So I really want to hear your testimony. Like, how did your faith journey start? Have you always been a Christian? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I have said this before on my platforms multiple times, plenty of times. I think there's a huge difference between being a fan of God and a follower of Christ. So I think a lot of times where a lot of us are fans of God, right? So if you break down different religions, religion is really just, hey, this is how you get access to God and this is how you do it, right? This religion will say you have to do this religion will have to say you do that. And I think a lot of times you hear that's kind of where that spiritual conversation comes in. A lot of people will say, I believe in the higher power, I believe in the universe, I believe in God, I believe in something bigger than me, all these things. And so for the longest, that's how I was living. So I didn't consider myself religious whatsoever. I didn't identify as a Christian whatsoever. I just knew there was a God. So I was a fan of God. So of course I would do that thing where when I needed something, I would pray. Like all the basic stuff made sense. I didn't grow up in church. I didn't grow up practicing anything, not Christianity, not Catholicism, the way I can't say that word.
Catholicism.
Yeah. The Bible was never introduced to me. The Bible was never read to me. It was just the basics. I knew of the 10 Commandments. I knew of, I would hear about don't sin, don't murder, don't do this, don't go to hell. Just very basic language when it came to God. And so with my journey specifically, I would say in 2020, I think before that, I would say like 2019, 2018, 2019, 2020. It was around the same time that I turned 25. So I don't know if it was a mix of like my whole brain forming, right? And me just getting older at that time. I was a new mom and I was in a new relationship and life had just completely catapulted since I was in college because I had got pregnant in college. So I went from living my best life in college, super single, totally of this world. I did not care about getting into heaven. I didn't care about hell. Like I was literally just living for me. And I think after I turned 25, once my life kind of settled and I started seeing all the consequences of my actions, I feel like at that time, my biggest priority was saving my relationship. And it was through me trying to save my relationship, did I try to find God for the first time. So I was like, okay, well, we need something bigger than us to help this work. So we need to church, we need spiritual counseling, like we need therapy. And that's kind of what introduced me to, I guess you can say, wanting to like really chase God back and pursue God back. But it wasn't because of me. It was really just to save my relationship. And when that ended in 2020, you fast forward a couple years, I could tell God was still chasing me. You know, that feeling when you know everything you're doing is just not working. You can't put your finger on it, but you find yourself in the same cycles. You know that whatever decisions you are making are not leading to anything fruitful. It's like defeat after defeat after defeat. You feel that emptiness, you feel that loneliness, and you just can't put your finger on it. And so it wasn't until last year, 2023, it wasn't until January of last year was I like, I'm absolutely done living my life the way that I'm living it. I need to basically date God and learn who God is and get to know God. I had never consistently prayed. I had never picked up a devotional. I had never opened my Bible to actually apply it to my life. I would open my Bible here and there and I would read a King James version and have no idea what I was reading and then just be like, this is boring, put it away. So last year, about a year and yeah, almost 2 years now, I was like, I'm going to cut off the entire world. I'm going to get myself back into therapy and I'm going to learn who God is. And that's where that journey technically started. And then by October of last year, I ended up giving my life to Christ. So as I was kind of getting to know God all last year, as I was actually opening my Bible to apply it to my life and get to know his character and what he really did and understand who Jesus was, that's when I officially became a follower of Christ. It was no longer, you know, higher power, I'm spiritual, like God is good, I know there's something bigger than me. It was like, hey, God is my creator, right? And Jesus is my savior. And I have relationship with God through Jesus Christ. And everything that I was reading in the Bible, it wasn't even, you know, as I was opening the Bible, as I was learning the history of it, as I was trying to apply it to my life, I wasn't approaching it with a hardened heart. I didn't approach it as, you know what, God's just a mad ego-driven God and he just wants to punish everybody. Like I didn't approach it in a way that had anything against God. I think because I approached the Bible and I approached getting to know him from a place of desperation, it really allowed me to embrace his love. And I think that's why my journey, what may look online, has seemed like it happened super fast because it kind of did. Basically, I spent 29 years of my life miserable and in the same cycles and doing all kinds of stuff I had no business doing. I finally got to the point of full surrender because I've done it all, tried it all. Nothing else has worked. And I found what worked for me as I got to know God. And I've literally just been falling in love with him ever since. And because I've always shared my life online, it just so happened that that was something that I started to share. So when I got baptized, when I gave my life away, in real time, people were kind of seeing that transformation happen. And here we are now. We're coming up on a year next month, literally in about a month. It'll be October 10th. I'm going to celebrate 1 year giving my life to Christ and being baptized and really being a follower of Christ, not just like I'm a fan of God and not just like being lukewarm and here and there. Like when I committed last year, I fully committed. So
Wow.
yeah. And I'm 30 now. I just turned 30 last month. So it feels like I've been of the world for a very long, long time. And I look back now and I'm like, I cannot believe it took me this long to understand, you know, God and the Bible and, you know, who Jesus is and what it meant for Jesus to die for us. But I'm glad I do now.
Yeah, you know what? Like, I have to say, like, one thing that I love about hearing everyone's testimony is that, one, it's yours, right? And seeing how many people have come to God in the past couple years, like no one can tell me that God is not moving. Like he is really transforming and saving everyone's lives, including people that were like prodigal sons and daughters. Okay. Right. Like he's really saving people. And I think it's beautiful that you are, you know, you've transitioned in such a short time span. I have to say, like, that's kind of how it happens. I feel like even for me in my own journey, like, all of a sudden I woke up and I was like, yeah, no, let me get it together. Like, you know what I mean? And and especially when you already have a pre-existing platform like you do, you've already had a platform. You have a lot of followers on TikTok. You have almost 100K on Instagram. Like you're popping. Like, so it's people that see that they can be like, okay, whoa, what is this? You know, what is she like a Jesus freak now? Like, what is she doing? If I'm gonna be a freak, it's definitely gonna be for Jesus. Okay. Like, you know, just leave. That I'm just keeping it real. But what I want to mention is I think it's very interesting that you went that route. Like, what prevented you from going the new age route? Because you mentioned in your relationship, to save your relationship, you just automatically sought like the God route. That's very interesting to me.
Well, I dabbled into everything beforehand. When I, when I, this is around where I was probably 25. So in 2020, I was 25. And then that's when the breakup officially happened. So from 24 to 25, I would say that was kind of the year that I was like really trying to partner with God to save my relationship. It was an uphill battle and just nothing had worked. But prior to that, so when I was in college, and I got pregnant, me and the father of my child, that was an accident. We were not together. We were just sleeping around and I just got caught up out of, I was acting like every other irresponsible, like not caring girl in college. I did not care. I was being so reckless. I had the mentality of like, it's not going to happen to me. I had the mentality of pull out's going to work every single time. Like, I don't have to be careful. I don't have to, like, we just think we're so superior. And we think, like, I had so much pride. And yeah. And then here we are. It was my senior year and I got caught up and I finally caught up to me. Luckily though, because we both were like, look, well, we're going to figure this out and we're going to make it work. And we definitely tried our hardest. But when it comes to like all the new age things, absolutely. Like I have like a zodiac. I have my Leo symbol tattooed on my finger right next to my cross. So, I mean, when it came to like everything new age, when it came to all the ways to heal, naturally, I'm a very curious person because I went to school for psychology and I wanted to be a criminologist. So naturally, I'm very much like, what do these means? What do crystals mean? I think the only thing I probably didn't dabble in are like tarot cards, but it's like, let me learn everything about the universe. Let me learn everything about the stars, the horoscopes, like anything that I can learn about myself, anything I can find identity in, rather it was a psych test, rather it was a numerology test, everything, I would look to those things for identity. I mean, I went to everything but the Bible, right? I went to everything but to like who I am as a daughter of God. So I think did the most. I've tried everything to like, even when it came to like me and him, I would compare our zodiac signs and I would be like, okay, well, this is why we're compatible. This is why we're not compatible. I mean, it literally, I was going to everything but God. And like I said, I think by that time I was so defeated because our son was I had got pregnant when I was 21. So by that time, like life again had just happened so quick. We went from, again, being in college, we're 21, 22 to having to graduate. We got big girl, big boy jobs. We bought a brand new house. So now I'm 25. I'm a homeowner. I'm basically a wife. I have almost a 3-year-old and I'm already like it was a lot. And I had never had a relationship before that. I was so happy single. I never thought I'd have a kid or get married. So the way my life flipped on me just really threw me off. Obviously, there's accountability. Everyone knows how you get pregnant. Like, I'm not here just shocked on like how my life ended up like this. But, it just didn't go the way I envisioned. So I think once that all caught up to me, I was just, how you said, it just happened. I woke up and I was like, this is my life. I was like, I'm not happy. I don't know. And because I had to jump, me and his dad, because we had to jump in survival mode so quick and nothing settled until a couple years later. And then I think we both realized like, whoa, what did we just get ourselves into? And yeah, it was a lot. And on paper, what me and him had did was the most success our family had seen because we were both very trauma bonded and we both came from similar backgrounds when it came to our family. So we were kind of like, we were so excited because we were like, oh, we're going to break the curse, right? We're going to break the generational trauma and we're going to stay together and we're not going to be separated. And we have good jobs and we have a house. Like we were, so excited to celebrate all these things. But we didn't have a support system because we were seen as we were seen as the couple who could financially help the family, who could help, who we had the weight of basically all that trauma and all the stuff on us. So we didn't have and we didn't have any friends. with our age, like it's not like there were other people our age who were just buying a house. People our age were either still in school or, they weren't settling down and having kids. So we as a couple, we were very isolated. We were in a city where we had no friends. So I think ultimately it was that loneliness. It was that desperation. I was like, nothing has worked. And clearly something is, we can't get through this, just me and you. So my first idea was like, well, let's start going to church. And like, I was like, well, maybe we can go to church and I don't know, maybe get like counsel from someone there. And then I was like, maybe we can go to therapy, do couples therapy. But at that time we were just not on the same page spiritually either. He was like, it's just not necessary. And so that's why I was still kind of back and forth with it, because again, my intention wasn't to save me. It was to save our relationship and to save him. From a woman's perspective, I was trying to save the man that I was with. So I was like, okay, we need God. Like we need some kind of divine intervention. Like we need the higher power to come in. So let's go ahead and start with that route. And I think that's why it took you more laters after that, a few more years later, for me to be like, you know what? I actually want to save myself. Like I want to do this. So I had tried all kinds of stuff prior. And again, it was just kind of out of a state of like desperation. And I was like, well, God has to. I mean, if anyone's going to save this, it's God. And we just got to figure out. And I didn't even know who he was at the time. I didn't even have a relationship with him like that. But that's kind of what made sense in my mind at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it really is out of a desperate place, right? Because God knows in our flesh that we like to hold on to things and we're just going to ride it till the wheels fall off. And it's only until we are forced from that place of desperation that we really do see God. And that's where faith steps in, because we have no choice other than to believe, that like God is going to bring us out of this. And I'm just very fascinated with the fact that you were able to go that track. And, even myself, like I didn't understand in my ignorance, even though I grew up in church all my life, the consequences of like engaging in certain things like the new age and things like that. And, just lukewarm Christian activities and things like that. Like, I didn't know that you were basically living the life of a wife. You bought a house. Like I can imagine that's a very difficult transition to go from living in a home together. What was that like transitioning out of that?
Yeah. So that breakup, to this day, 2021, it was the worst, like absolutely the worst year of my life. 2021 was the 1 year processing that breakup and processing a very real transition. It was extremely difficult. Our home, so both of our names were on this house. And that by itself was very hard for me to let go because I was in love with this home. I mean, it was a brand new home. I picked the tile and I picked the brick and I picked the paint, and it was a home that I felt like I built. And it was a huge accomplishment for me at that time because when we did close on the home, I was only like 22, 23. So I was very much like, yeah, like we're doing all these things, yada, yada. And it was a nice part of town. Like and I think that's why it hit me so hard when I woke up. I still felt so young. And I think that's why this thought of like, wait, is this it? Like, am I only 25 and I already have the kid and the home and the house and the husband and like all these things? And it just didn't feel like I wasn't fulfilled in that. I was like, this can't be it. And at that time, my relationship, it was already feeling like roommate. And I was like, there's just no way. Like, there's no way it felt like I was like a 60-year-old living a 60-year-old life with like this. It just didn't feel, it just threw me off. I was like, wait, how did life get like this? And so when that breakup happened, I think the two hardest things, I think this would be for any parent to go through during that breakup was one, first and foremost, seeing my child grieve is to this day the hardest thing to ever witness. My son was 3 going on 4 at that time. So he was old enough to understand that there was a shift, but he wasn't too aware to where I could kind of sit down and explain to him like on an emotional level, kind of what's going on. And that was extremely difficult. I would say that was the hardest thing to process. Seeing my son just be sad, be confused. All he's known was me and his dad. So just asking questions of like, well, don't y'all love each other? And well, doesn't he love you? Or like, why am I here? And it didn't help because me and his dad, we did not heal whatsoever. We both were guilty of jumping into other relationships. His dad had brought other women around him. So it was just a lot going on for our son. And that by itself was very hard. And I think the adjustment, because I was so emotionally detached from the relationship, and because it was ultimately me who put my foot down and said, this has to be done. I kind of already, I feel like I was just kind of going through the motion of it. Like I said, I had already gone through so much heartbreak, and I had already gone through so much like fight and grit. And I had already gone through like all of this sadness that at first it was kind of a sense of a relief to leave. Like I was like, look, like I know this is what's best. So I'm going to have the courage enough to make that decision, because I'm not going to be the repeat of my family cycle, and I'm not going to stay just because of the child. I cannot do that to my son. So at first it was relief, and the only grief was me watching my son grieve. But I think throughout the year, I 100% thought that we were going to get back together. In my mind, I was like, look, we're going to break up. We're going to be done. I moved out, we had to sell the house, all these things. But I thought like in a year, once like God, because again, in my mind, I'm like, you know what? God will work on us separately. Like God will work on us separately, and then we'll come back together and it'll be great. So I think why that year was so hard was because there were so many times where that was not happening. So like things would happen to where it would bring us farther apart. At the end of the day, a breakup is a breakup, and everyone grieves it completely different. And with all due respect, I'll just say me and him, we grieved it completely different. On his side, there was a lot of anger. There was a lot of hurt. There was a lot of making my life not easy. So that didn't help either. Financially, it was horrible. I had to start over financially for myself. Like we went, we had paid the bills how we paid them, and I had to go from, and he had made more money than me at that time, so I had to go from paying XYZ to having my same salary, and now having to basically fund an entire household and some. So that was very difficult. So I think the financial strife and just the constant, like, again, the entire time I thought it was going to be temporary. And again, throughout that year, the things that kept happening, it was like a dagger in my heart over and over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, I did not think it was going to be basically this serious. And I know that may sound really silly to say, but in my mind, I was like, look, I'm going to move down the street. This is going to be his big wake up call. God's going to move and he's going to change us, and we're going to come together in a year, and then it's going to be fine. And yeah, that year I could have never expected mentally. And that doesn't even include what I was going through just personally. I was going through a lot of things, a lot of toxic things with my family that was very, very hard to work through. There was a lot of abandonment. There was a lot of separation. I was not supported through that breakup whatsoever. So I genuinely felt very alone. And at the same time, because I don't know God whatsoever, I'm not coping well at all. My coping mechanism, other men, other relationships. I need to be outside. Like I need to distract myself. So I was causing it. My life was just crashing and burning so fast in 2021. And on top of that, I had no money. That's when I was like really struggling for the first time financially on my own. And then on top of that, like I said, I was consistently like trying to help my son grieve the process. So it was a lot to take in. And then you would think, okay, since 2021 was so bad, like I would have immediately ran to God by the end of the year. But no.
Right.
It took one year. It took one more year of God like chasing me and trying to pursue me for me to finally be like, okay, you got it. I'm fully surrendered to you. But 2021 was very tough. Like I was so separated. I was so depressed. That was the first year that I absolutely was in the dangerous space of like unaliving myself. Like I was over it. And I remember I had mentioned that a long time ago, and it was going to be me and my son. Like I have had some of the darkest moments in 2021 where in my mind, I was like, if it happens, like I used to be in my car and like these intrusive thoughts would just come in, and I would tell myself, I'm like, well, as long as I'm with my son, like we'll be fine. Like if I just end it now, then we don't have to be separated. And like the thoughts were bad in 2021. And like I said, you would think that would be the year that I'm like, I need you, God. But it took 1 year after that. But it was a lot to navigate. A lot to navigate.
Yeah. I always say, like, it's so easy to kind of like pass judgment on people when they kind of have thoughts like that, right? But when you
Right.
experience like real trauma and rock bottom, you don't know the things you're gonna think. You're literally
Yeah.
thinking things that you never would have imagined that you would ever think of. And so I completely understand. And it's a sobering moment, for sure, when you yourself are having thoughts like that and you're like, okay, like, whoa, who am I? And it's such
Right.
a low feeling and a hopelessness that you feel when you are having those thoughts, because you just think like, if this is what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling, like, then why am I here to feel
Yeah.
this level of pain? Like, I didn't even know human beings can feel like this level of pain. Like, this is, and it's one thing on top of another. I always say, like, hey, when it rains, it pours, you know? And I believe because God wants us, like, I think it's his mercy in hindsight that for you, like, he isolated you in a situation where, yeah, you thought you guys were probably going to get back, all these different things. And there was constant confirmation that maybe this isn't going to happen. And then you had to adjust to that idea. But at the end of the day, like, if you guys were still living together and then you would have like continued on that journey of getting saved, eventually everything would have changed anyway. Cause now you got to stop, any sort of fornication, things like that. That's going to change the whole trajectory of you guys' relationships. And that within itself is hard to navigate, because it's like, we all have those thoughts of like, we already did it. So why are we stopping? We got a kid. Why are we stopping? And so God has to put us in a place where he really gives us no choice other than to surrender to him. And so I want to talk also about like purity for a little bit. So, I really appreciate your openness and transparency, because at the end of the day, like, let's be like, keep it real. Like, it's not easy to be like, God, I ain't gonna have sex. I ain't gonna do it, Lord. Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard. You know what I mean? It's really hard to navigate on that. And then on top of that, let's keep it real. You don't know where that man is. You don't know where your husband is. You don't know when he's coming. We don't know the time or the day. And it's like, how long am I going to be waiting? Like, and then we also have this perception in our flesh of like, okay, God, like, it's been a year. Like, I'm ready now.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? But it's like, I was doing what I was doing for mad long. And now in a year, because I got it right, I'm like, yeah, God blessed me immediately. Like, you know what I mean? It's like,
Yep.
we tend to think that. So how was the transition for you as it pertains to purity?
Yeah. So I will say I would have never thought to be that girl that was like, oh yeah, I'm waiting till marriage. For me, it genuinely has been like a conviction at a time. So first it was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go a couple months. I'm going to do a little detox. And then that turned into, no, you're actually not going to sleep with anybody until you're committed. And then that turned into, no, like you have to be committed X amount of time and then you can sleep with them. And then the conviction just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger until eventually it was like, no, your obedience to God right now means that you are saving yourself until marriage. And trust me when I say, never would have thought that was going to be a part of my testimony or even something that I would agree to or like feel like made sense. Now, 100% it makes so much sense. And I do it with so much pride and so much joy. But the journey there, growing up, and this is kind of like your standard, like psychological reason, but the father wounds that I had, the mother wounds that I had, the abandonment that I had, it went across the board, and so it was very, very hard. And so what that turns into for a woman, it turns into promiscuity. I'm looking for attention. I'm looking for validation in the man that I never got in the household. So I'm looking for that in the world. Especially even with what I saw in my household, it made me not like men, made me hate men. So I never enjoyed men. I never respected them because I never saw that in my household. So from early on, when I did start having sex and all these things, to me, it was a game. It was always a game. In my mind, I was programmed to think that a man is going to hurt you or cheat on you or disrespect you. So you might as well beat him to the punch. So I was definitely that girl. Like I was absolutely Jezebel spirit to the T. Like My ego and my pride was so high. I did not get emotionally attached to men. Like I was again very promiscuous, so I didn't care what the situation was. Like I didn't care about men's emotions. Like I didn't care about feelings. And in the flip side, when you are operating with a lot of worldly men, that can be even more attractive because all you are is lustful to them. And so you can only imagine all the soul ties I had and all the lustful soul ties that I had through college. And at that time, I'm thinking, and I think any woman will go through this, but you really do think like you're the shit, basically. Like you feel validated in that and you feel so powerful because sex is your superpower. So you feel very much like I can have any man that I want. I can have any control. I can have as much control as I want. And it really feeds your ego. And that can be very, very, very dangerous. So that gives you an idea of like the lifestyle I had and the mindset that I had towards men and towards sex and all these things. I did not have a healthy relationship with sex whatsoever by any means. I think that's also why God gave me a son because it completely changed the game for me. So when his father, like I said, we're 21 at this time. I'd never been in a committed relationship ever. I never wanted to be in a committed relationship. I had never been committed to just one man. So it was very foreign to me. As sad and crazy as it sounds, that's just what my life was. So adjusting to a committed relationship was very hard. And having a son, like, so my, a quick background with my upbringing, my biological mom, I did not know her until I was in my 20s. So my son was about one when I met her. And she's so amazing. And we have a great relationship now, but that created a huge abandonment wound for me because I didn't know my biological mother. And so when it came to being a mom, when it came to being a parent, that's something I never wanted to be because I never felt like I had that in me because of what happened with me. And I was like, like, I feel like, because what happens in your mind is, well, if my mom doesn't want me, if my mom didn't want me, then like, I don't want any, I'm not going to want a kid either. So I dealt with a lot of things, right? So when I had my son, that was a journey in itself. Like convincing myself that I had that like maternal instinct in me because I always felt so detached to it because I was so masculine and because I was so, I just, again, the ego and the pride, because I was so dominant. Like I never felt that like feminine, maternal like type of instinct. And so after the breakup, when the breakup had happened, before that, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what it was like to date. I didn't go on dates. I was never courted. I didn't have that experience. So unfortunately, when the breakup happened, I went back to what I knew, which was sleeping around, which was okay, like where's the quickest man that I can get attention from? And that was my first instinct. But very quickly I realized at that age, I was like, this is not that. Like I am not gonna be out here like that. And when I went into a relationship, not even 4 months later, it was very quick. I hopped into a new relationship because I was very insecure. And I basically, like, the first guy that I knew was attracted to me, I'm like, oh my God, he is the only guy that's ever going to want like a single mom. I have to jump on this opportunity now because I had no self respect, no self esteem, like, none of the things. And I was just like, ooh, attention. And I was like, oh, you're the only one that's going to love me. Okay, great. We got to make this work. And even through having a relationship with him, lust is what kept us together. Even going through the relationship with him, there was another 10-year situationship of mine that would come in and out of my life. We had a very strong lustful connection. And I say all that to say, during those years, between those 3 years, at 2020 and 2023, like 2020, 21, 21 and 22, was basically in and out of situationships. And it was so difficult because I could feel like I knew it wasn't right. And in 2022, I remember I could just, again, this isn't, I'm not fully trying to chase after God. I'm not even fully like having a prayer life or committed. I just could feel that feeling of just like, stop having sex, stop doing that to your body. Like, stop putting yourself in those positions. I would fight against it. And it got to the point where the men that I was dealing with at the time, I tried telling them, I was like, look, like, I think I'm going to be like celibate. Like, I was like, listen, I think I'm going to point. They laughed in my face. They were like, girl, one of them was even like, all right, when you're done with that BS, then you can come call me. Like they did not take it seriously. And that was so hurtful for me. That was very hurtful for me. That really hurt my feelings. And they just, I don't know, I listened to them. I was like, you know what? You're right. That's so silly. Because they were, they were playing that narrative of like, we love each other and why would we stop that? And that's such a beautiful part of our. So it's like, you're so right. Why would I take that away from you? Like this is more than just sex. Like, of course it is. Da, 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 da. And so you there was some infidelity on my end. I don't even know if you call it infidelity if you're not together, but I had cheated a few times. And I don't know, girl, like those couple years, when you see yourself just being so destructive and so stupid and just so like not you, that's what I was going through. And I felt like I had so many emotions. There was shame, but also at the same time, my feelings were hurt because I was like, well, how could y'all not respect me? Like, I don't understand. Like, there was so much confusion. I didn't, I was starting not to like myself. And then as a mom, I was feeling a lot of shame because I was like, there's no way, like, I would ever, if I ever found out my son was basically dealing with a woman like me, I would be heartbroken. Like, there was so many levels of emotion I was trying to work through. And at the same time, it all stemmed from that root feeling of wanting to be loved. It all stemmed from that root feeling of wanting to be safe. I just did it in the most unhealthy ways, right? Then you fast forward to me running to God's arms. But at the very end of that year, things were done with a lot of men. And that 10-year situationship, I went to go visit him. And, I knew what it was. Out of all my relationships, that is the most lustful. And when I remember I went to go visit him. And when I was going to stay with him for a couple days. And for the first time ever, as soon as I stepped in an apartment, I felt like I had no business being there. Like, I could feel it and it did not feel comfortable. Like, for the very first time, I did not feel comfortable with him. Now, mind you, this is like my, reliable, like great, we have all these things, da da da. And I remember,
reliable. I'm done. Y'all understand. Y'all know what she's talking about. Come on.
yeah, I feel like what I'm explaining, if you get it, you get it. And a lot of people will not talk about things. I get it. I'm saying stuff
Tell
like
it.
this.
Tell it all. Tell the truth. Shame the devil.
Yeah, I know there's also going to be women and men because I've experienced it on my platform because I'm so open about this. I've talked about all this stuff. I have a whole celibacy playlist, but I've gotten heat from men and women, especially men, but it's the weird men that are like, well, once a whore and like they're just say the most horrible things, but it is a testimony, seriously.
Amen.
But amen. And I just, even being in the middle of the act, it just didn't feel right. And I felt very convicted. And I was too ashamed at that time to tell him what was going on. So things got very awkward. And I genuinely felt like I just didn't enjoy it. Like the feeling, like the enjoyment of it, it was gone. Like, for the first time, it's like I could see lust manifesting and I was like scared of it, if that makes sense. Like, it didn't feel right. And by any means, it didn't feel right. So once I got out of there, this was like December. And then January, that new year of 2023, that's when I had officially hit my rock bottom. And I was like, all right, God. I was like, I want to only know you. I only want to date you. I want you to be the only man in my life. Like, it was very much like, I was like, I can't keep living like this. I do not want to keep giving my body away like this. And I don't want to keep doing what I am doing. I knew I had a lustful heart because of the cheating that I would do, because of the emotional cheating that I would do, physical and emotional, just because of the way that I was still treating men. It was just such a red flag to me. Like, I wasn't even really so focused on what the men were doing. It was really my actions and my behavior. I was like, Vanity, this is not okay. You are pushing, we're going to be 30 in a couple years. Like, there's no way we can keep living like this and acting like this. And so at that time, I didn't necessarily take a vow to celibacy, like to waiting until marriage, because that has come within the past year and a half. But at that time, I was just like, you know what, God, I need to get to the root of why, like, my promiscuity. I need to get to the root of like why I still go back to XYZ. And I think genuinely that's when like my true healing process started. I had got back into therapy and I went to that therapist strictly just because of men. I was like, you know what, girl, I was like, we don't need to talk about my upbringing. We don't need to talk about, I know that I'm a psych major. I know what's wrong and not wrong. And she was a faith-based counselor as well. I was like, I have a lustful heart. Help me. And yeah, it's been a journey since. And I have been, I think in January of like next year. So we're September, October, like 3 months short, it'll be a year, no sex. And it's the longest I've ever gone. And this year, 2024, so these 9 months, first time in my life, like I am single. Single. Like there is no prospects, there is no dating. It has genuinely been like last year was okay, we find God, we get to know you, we're falling in love, I give my life to you. And then this year is full on like walking that walk out. Like I am doing everything for God's favor and to glorify God. And that means in all the ways, like financially, physically, mentally, emotionally. And that's been a very, very interesting journey that I feel like as a Christian girly, especially at this age, only so like you only so many people can relate to that because by this age a lot of times people are settled down, so it's easy to talk to like because you're married, and so it's easy to I guess talk about the dating scene because you technically don't have to be in it, but to be in 2024 dating as a single Christian celibate abstinent no sex until marriage woman who is sober minded, baby. Like
All the things. Period.
no.
Like it literally, and I think that's one of the things that when I was on the panel that you were really resonating with, because
Yes.
to your point, it is so easy to talk about dating and I genuinely feel like when you're already married and it's like guys, I don't think you understand the dating climate has completely changed. Like it's
Changed.
very very difficult to even if you are. I remember the first time I decided to date a guy, like I was talking about in Dallas. I was dating a guy when I was 21. I dated him because he told me he was Christian, so I believed him. I was like, I'm gonna do things the right way. I'm gonna date a Christian guy, and obviously that's not for everybody. But I realized that in being with, when I say it's not for everyone, I mean like not everyone is going to be lying about being a Christian. But what's important to me is that person is an active Christian, because to your point, there are fans of God with the whole, not trying to get on anyone's case, but like the God first in the bio, they tend to be the worst ones. I don't know what it is. But yeah, a lot of people like men, they also may pretend, and sometimes I feel like the game has revamped where they kind of play the long game now. And then you turn around and it's like, okay, like we just like wasted like 3-4 months and this is still not what I really thought it was going to be. But I want to pivot a little bit, and I really loved your TikTok series. You have a TikTok series called Humble Beginnings. So tell me how that came about, or let everyone know how that came about, because one thing that I want to touch on is social media, the whole social media aspect of it, of being one in social media, period. And then also like navigating through the honest financial challenges that people just experience, and also being an entrepreneur. With me being in social media for about 5 years now, there have been a lot of ups and downs. And obviously, a lot of people are not going to be talking about the downs. And one thing that I loved is I can just see and feel how honest and transparent you are about your journey and where you are. So explain to everyone what was the inspiration behind Humble Beginnings, and what are you doing now navigating through that?
So we'll just pretend that so as of November of when I got baptized, so November of 2023, from that month moving forward, I literally was like, I'm rebuilding my life to your standard. I'm rebuilding my life on biblical principles, point blank, period. So in every aspect of my life, I completely started over. It came with a lot of mourning. It came with a lot of grief. It came with a lot of relationships ending. It came with a lot. But like I said, at that time, I was so okay giving my life away. I did not care about anything in my old life. I didn't. So when it came to career, so at this time we had the whole year we were chasing God back. And that summer was when I was kind of building financially on how the Bible says. So I started tithing consistently that summer. I had moved in with family. We were paying off debt. I had this little series as well on TikTok called Season of Sacrifice. And I basically was like, I'm back with family. I am trying to land a 6-figure job. I'm trying to build wealth. Like that's what the conversation was. And so it was so great. It was so amazing. I was tithing. We were paid off debt. met. And by God's grace, I had got a 2 bedroom apartment. And that was the first time I had had a 2 bedroom since losing that house. And because you go from going from a 4 bedroom, brand new, amazing house to having to go backwards in a 1 bedroom was very humbling already. And I had already went through that. So I was very excited to be in a 2 bedroom. So I get this 2 bedroom apartment, all my debts paid. Like I sold a lot of my stuff. So I'm really starting fresh. I'd opened a savings account. I felt just on top of it. And I was like, God, look at us. I was like, yes. I was like, I love it. We are finally, because recklessly spending and sex were like those two were my, you know, that was like my kryptonite. It was the recklessness of everything. And so I had really bad like money habits, like money spending habits. So I had got educated, like I had got a little like financial advisor. It was great, 10 out of 10. So in December, I was like, okay, you know what? I want to go ahead and talk to you, me talking to God. I want to talk to you about my career. At that time, I was working in property management and I was working that dream remote job. I had money. I worked on a MacBook. I could work anywhere. My job was literally meetings and emails. So it was that job that a lot of people want when it comes to working from home. I just wasn't a fan of it. I wasn't a fan of property management. So every quarter I do an Esther fast. So 3 days, 72 hours, only water, no food. So I'm in an Esther fast and I really was just praying to God about my career. I was like, I'm not happy where I'm at. I've always wanted to be a full-time YouTuber. That's like the one thing that's always been on my list since like 2012. Like that's been on my list for a very long time. And I had been on YouTube in college. Like I knew I wanted to get paid to talk. And that just made sense for me at that time. Back in high school, I had the privilege of being on a reality show. And that experience of that reality show, like being mic'd up, being in front of a camera, it was in that moment where I was like, I want to figure out how to do this for real. So that seed had always been in my brain. And I was like, God, like, what am I doing? Do I stay on social media? Do I get off of it? Like, do I put that dream down? Do I just pursue YouTube? I'm not happy where I'm at, but I'm also, again, I'm pushing that age where I want to retire. God, what is my career? That's all I was asking. I was like, what is my career? I don't know. I get fired. So I come out that fast. A week later, job lets me go. I was shocked. Like and I remember even praying to God too. I was like, "No, I'm not saying I'm ungrateful. I love my job." I literally was like, "Don't know. I'm not saying." I literally was like, I'm not being ungrateful. I'm stewarding this very well. Like I have a good heart posture about this. I'm not saying that I hate it here and I'm just so miserable. I want to do something different. Boom, I get let go. And it was due to a company wide layoff. And I was the only one in my, like, basically, my group. And so I
Wow.
was like, okay. And so that took a toll. That was December of last year. So December and January, I was down bad. Like I was very scared. I had never been like go in my life. And mind you, I just like hit these financial goals. Like I was like, "Dear God, there's no way," because we just worked so hard to finally get here. I'm finally responsible. I got some savings. Like I have an investment account. I'm like, there's just no way. And so when January came, I was like, I had gotten my unemployment. I got food stamps. So I was like, okay, this is some cushion. I'm not as scared. My unemployment at that time was 2 grand a month. And so obviously that was nothing, but my rent itself was $2,100. So yes, I wish I would do anything to get that 2 grand again, but it was 2 grand a month, but my rent itself was $2,100. So the only money that I was bringing in from the unemployment wasn't even enough to make my rent. And then I have my child support, and then the food stamps was helping me with food. But still, I was very much like, this, I am scared. I don't know how I'm going to do anything. Well, at that time in February, I was like, I have to make a decision. Like going into February, I was like, okay, it's already been a few months. Like, Vanity, we need to make a decision. Like, what are we going to do moving forward? You're applying for jobs and nothing is happening. But I was truly convinced I was going to get a job within like 3 months. I was like, don't worry, 3 months, you just have a month, you'll get a job. So I was like, well, while you're waiting, like in this downtime, girl, you have no choice. You might as well get on the internet, like get fully on the internet how you want to. So I did. Things blew up. And then a long time ago, going into February, I told God, I was like, listen, all I can do is apply for work and pursue my dream. I don't know what door you're going to open, but we'll see. And to this day, you fast forward now, we're in September. To this day, every door to get a job has been closed. I mean, I can't get entry level jobs, old companies I used to work for. I'm talking like customers. I just got rejected from a job that was insurance, like things I try to go back to be a cashier at HEB. Like, I have gotten so many referrals. I've gotten so many interviews. And to this day, every job opportunity, the door has closed. So you bring us to humble beginnings. Where I'm at right now is I basically have no choice. That's why I kind of joked around at what I said. I'm like, God, I ain't got no choice. Like, trust me, as much as I want to have a job, as much as I would love stability, as much as I would love my benefits back, and as much as as a single mom, I would love to, because I had to move back in with family. As much as I would love my financial independence, God has me in a position where it's gone and I have no choice but to really partner with him and create with him and like generate income with him. And I started off the series basically explaining where I'm at, which is like, look, we're not employed. I'm a single mom. I live with family and, no job is coming in. I'm not on any government assistance. So I have no choice but to generate income from scratch. And this is what I've done. This is what I plan to do. And so this is how we can kind of do it together. And so that's where explaining the different platforms and the little money that I make now comes from.
Yeah, I love the transparency because, again, like I have definitely experienced myself. I never really talked about it. And if I'm going to be honest, I still don't even think that I'm ready yet. But I have definitely experienced feeling like I had like everything was like going like so well until
Right.
like one day it wasn't. And I was like, what's going on? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And I have all these goals and it can feel so discouraging because you're looking at the things that you want and the things you're actually, to be fair, you're comparing yourself to yourself. Like, it's like, God, I just want what I had. Like, you know what I mean? And it can feel so like far, like, did I miss the bar? Like, what is am I going to be able to get this again? Like, and your mind just plays tricks on you because at the end of the day, like, bills do need to get paid. You know what I mean? And so it's this constant like vacillation between like, God, I know what your word says and I believe it, but it's like, God, help my unbelief because I'm like wondering like what's going on and things like that. And so I definitely understand where you're coming from. And then let's also talk about the fact that like you'll be on social media and you'll have like I don't know what it's called, like micro influencers. And you have these micro influencers saying like, I have only 10,000 followers and I'm going to show you how I have like 6-figure like years. And then you're like, wait, huh? Like logistically, like I'm sure anything is possible. Like truly, like no hate, but it's like, you look at your circumstance and you're like, wait a second. If that's what we doing at those numbers, then what about my numbers? You know what I mean? And so it's a very interesting thing to navigate because also I feel like, I don't know if it's like the OG YouTubers back in the day, but it's kind of like once they reach a certain level of success, they keep climbing. Like there's no decline. And so in my own personal journey, I was very confused when that seemed like it was not my story. And I'm like, why would I reach a certain point to stop there? Like that doesn't make sense to me. And so it has been like an interesting journey for sure. And that's why like I like really resonated with like everything that you were saying. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, like I definitely understand where it is that you're coming from. And also I noticed that you spoke about struggling to be happy, right? And also like a lack of fulfillment. I'm sure we all can relate to that. But out of that transition from you know, basically being a wife and, you know, having your own home and everything at such a young age, like now with you surrendering to God and being fully single. And it's so interesting too, because I feel like when people say they're single, they always got someone in their DMs. It's like, when I say I'm single, I mean it. I mean, there's no one.
Nobody. And nobody. You truly, I think sometimes in the past, maybe we would laugh about it, but I genuinely like, you feel hidden. Like it's not even nobody. It's the type of single where it's like, And it's not like single technically by choice where it's like, oh, people are coming at you and you're like, no, 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 no. It's like, it's just dry. I mean, it's like, there's no, haven't met anybody new, like, haven't had any fresh conversation. Like, so yeah, but any point to to your point, how you were just saying, like how I just expressed that there was kind of this lack of fulfillment and just going through all those transitions. Ultimately, at the end of the day, what I realized, like what that was in these 10 years, as I went into 30, I think really reflecting that, I think all the grief really caught up to me. Like, I didn't realize how much grief I was still holding on to. I was still grieving that relationship. I'm still grieving that home in a different city because I moved, because my life has been so unstable all throughout my 20s. It's like every single year it was a completely different pivot. From I moved out when I was 17, I'm 30 now. From 17 to 30, the longest I've been under one roof was 2 years. I am consistently moving. Like things are consistently starting over. Like I am always having to adjust and things are consistently giving and then getting taken and then I have and then I don't and then I have and then I don't. And it's hard because a lot of the times I can see my fault in it. Of course, like I felt like my 20s was just damage control. I felt like my 20s was just like a lot of reaping what you sow, but you sowed into a lot of worldly things. So just having to learn really hard lessons on top of like actually having to go through just like real healing from not the most ideal childhood. And so with all that combined, like once again, I think it just kind of hit me as because I was pulling, I realized I had fallen to a deep depression and it was a functional one. But I was like, wow, like here we are again. The only difference is God is my rock. So we love that. But yeah, I think it was just hard. My spirit was grieved as well. I think I never lost sight of God, so it wasn't like it wasn't like any other depression in the past where I felt very hopeless and alone. I knew God was there. I just personally chose. I just didn't feel like talking to Him. It's one of those things, sometimes like even if you're the most devout Christian and even if you have the best relationship, we get so in our heads and such in a funk that we don't even want to talk to God. We're just like, not right now. Like, and you keep going through the motions of life, but that's ultimately what it was. I was so sad. And I was just like, I'll process this when it's time to process this, but I don't want to process it right now. And then 1 month, 2 months went by and I was like, okay, we gotta pull ourselves out and we gotta get back to like focusing on what we can do because we can't change the circumstance, but I'm here for a reason. And that's also what kind of led to like the humble beginnings. Cause I think in totality, I'm like, wow, we're really starting. Like, I mean, to the life on paper right now for me is extremely like just so different. I mean, this is going to sound, some people may hear this and be like, get over it. Some people may hear it and be like, no, I get it. But like, no, truly, like to be in a position where it's no money, no man, no companionship, there's no stability, like no home. Like even though yes, I'm so grateful to be living with family, like no home of mine. I also got rid of everything. So in obedience, I was in Acts, and from there I was being obedient to God, and I had got rid of everything in my old home, like everything. I literally posted a video on TikTok and I was like, hey, if you're in the DFW area and you need something, come get it. And so that was really hard. Like I own nothing right now except for like my car and like clothes that I brought for like my son and I. So truly, like humble beginnings is truly where I'm at in life right now. And again, to do all this, go through all this sober minded, it takes a lot. And I'm sober minded by choice. By now, the stress and all that stuff, I could have been went to reach out to somebody, try to get attention. I could have been posted a half naked picture with all the following and stuff now. Oh, I could have been on Instagram and all my social media using it to glorify me and feed into my pride and my ego. Like there's all these things I could have been doing. I could have been distracting myself to it all. And I'm choosing not to. And that's where that contentment comes in. I'm choosing to be patient and stay under this. And that's all great. Spiritually, that's great. But it's, I think, one of the most difficult things you can do and one of the most rare things I think you can do, because this truly is work. Like it's work that a lot of people won't have to face, either because they don't have the courage to, or because they don't want to, or because maybe they are in a relationship where they have no choice, to where now you have to worry about you and that person. So yeah, to be truly single, to be truly sober minded, to be truly on this walk. And how you were saying earlier when we were talking about social media platforms, it's also another thing when you feel like the reason why you're on social media is to glorify God. To be in this space is very difficult. It's a heavy burden. And it's not like it is a heavy burden. I mean, it's a lot of ministering. I mean, it's be bold, to be a bold Christian on the internet is not for the weak. And so that creates a lot of that. And that's hard too, because that worldly part of you, that influencer part of you, because like you said, I understand what it's like to be in the influencer space. I wanted to be like, back in the day, I was like doing fitness. I was like, I wanted to be a little fitness influencer. So it's hard sometimes because there's certain deals and brands or whatever that's not going to align with what you're doing. And it's not easy, for us to get that same amount of money. So it truly is a unique space because it's like, well, how do I combine my purpose and my profit, but create generational wealth from scratch? And while I'm doing the one thing the world hates, and hence why this series is created. That's why, like, not the tagline, but that's why I say in each video, hey, this is what I'm doing. Like, spiritually, this is how God's keeping me. And practically, this is what I'm doing, because both have to exist in my world. I could easily get on here and be like, hey, let's do TikTok shop. Let's do this get rich quick scheme. Like, I'm going to go ahead and work with this lingerie. I could do these things. So not letting that desperation creep in and doing it how the Bible says to do it is very hard. Again, hence humble beginnings. So to be here is a very unique space, and not everyone's in it, and I understand that. So when I post about it, I'm super thankful to whoever can relate, because it's not everyone. It's not going to make sense to everyone, and this journey is not going to make sense to everyone. But since I'm in it, I'm definitely going to talk about it, because we have to consistently keep each other, especially the body of Christ, have to keep each other going.
You know what? I feel like I literally adore you, because truly, I don't like, just like how you felt like you resonated with me, like I feel like I really resonate with you on so many things, because come to think of it, now that you mention it, a lot of these brands and stuff like that, like there were a couple times like in my career where it's like, okay, like I don't really want to put on lingerie like on YouTube. Like I don't really want to do something like that. And you start to realize like, a lot of the brands, because let's be honest, like sex does sell in whatever way. So it's like, as long as you're like making something like very sexy, like overtly sexy, like that's what draws like attention and things like that. And so when it is difficult to be on this side of things, and also in my own respective path, I noticed that for some reason, and this still is the circumstance, like I have not been able to successfully get management. And I've had managers like in the past, but it was just not at all what made sense. And to be honest, there was even recently a Christian company that was recommended to me by one of my like Christian friends. And for some reason, I just like, and they're great. They are fantastic people. But I knew in the back of my mind that it was going to fall through. Like I knew it. And ironically enough, I follow one of the girls that got signed. So the day that I got my like rejection letter, I'm just like casually on Instagram, and she got her she got signed to them. And I wasn't even, because I was like, the back of my mind, I knew it. And I'm like, God, like, I'm just not, that's not my path. Like, and I can easily look at it as, dang, it didn't even work for a Christian company either. Like, but I don't feel that way, because there are things that God has put in my spirit that I know I'm supposed to be doing, like for myself. Like, let's be honest here. I feel like I am the type of content creator or influencer that wants to go the trajectory of like business. And that's not everyone's thing. Like there are a lot of different avenues that I don't feel like people really know about in terms of how you influence. You can have a career where you solely work with brands, or you can go the route of having your own website, having a strong brand awareness, like having your own ebooks, like all that's a way different trajectory than like brands hitting you up and things like that. And I feel like that's the path that like I more lean into, is creating my own thing, because I've always felt like YouTube to me is a vehicle to get where I want to go. I always knew in the back of my mind that like, and I don't know when I'm ever going to stop or if I'm ever going to stop, but I always thought to myself, I don't want to have to be 40 years old and I have to show up on YouTube because if I don't, I'm
Right.
not going to make money. I'm not going to be able to like sustain
Yeah.
anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I also do want things like I want success for myself. I was talking to my friends the other day and I was like, I don't believe that God gave me the talent, the charisma that he gave me to just like do nothing and like let it go to waste. Like I believe I'm supposed to be using, I know I'm supposed to be using these gifts and things like that. So you being so transparent in the way that you are on the internet, I'm telling you, it is blessing so many people. It is helping so many people because this is the side that people don't talk about because everyone is used to, I've arrived. This is what I went
Right.
through. You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna lie, I tend to be that type of person myself. Which is why I was drawn to your story because I'm like, yo, she's in it. She's in it and
Yeah.
she's documenting it. And like, I'm really drawn to that as opposed to like, because I still have those thoughts like right now, which is why I didn't even want to get into like my story. I'll talk to you privately, but like, I don't want to get into it. You know what I mean? Because I just, yeah, so I'm like, she could do it for me.
No,
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And then, yeah, I just feel like one of the things that I would say really quickly to wrap it up that has really changed my life, I want to say has definitely been prayer and fasting. But I want to know, so far on your journey, like, have you felt like there are moments where it's like, dang, like I really don't want to like pick up my Bible right now? Because I feel like with some, I don't know, certain like Christian influencers, it almost seems like once they got saved, they like never lost the zeal. And it's like,
Right.
I've been a Christian all my life, technically. I have not lived the way that I was supposed to for all of my life, though. And I always say I'm a work in progress because I almost don't want to give myself the credit because I know how tricky the enemy is and how like, I don't know. I just never want to come across like I've like arrived in any way.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like if I act like I do or if I say I do, then it makes me like more of a target, if that makes sense. Like for the enemy to try and be like, oh, so word, you said you wasn't fornicating? Here's the hottest guy you've
Right.
ever seen in your life. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, no, like, you know, so healing with God and like fasting and prayer has definitely been, you know, instrumental in my journey. But have you experienced that so far and like, you know, it coming up to be your 1 year anniversary that you're just like, man, like when I'm going through something, like how do you cope and how do you handle it? Because I know for me, I don't know why, whenever I'm the happiest, I tend to like want to praise God and thank God the most. But for some reason, when I'm going through something negative, I'm like mute. Like I can't get myself to want to like reach out to God. And I know for a lot of people, it seems to be opposite. So how do you feel about that?
I think because I'm a parent and I'm so grateful now as a mother who's pursuing Christ, I have such a beautiful revelation and I have such a better understanding of who God is to me from a parent child perspective. So the times that I know how I kind of was explaining earlier, there's some times where I'm just so in my head or so overwhelmed where I just don't want to talk to God. I don't get in my head thinking that he's going to take it personal because it's not coming from a personal place. In the same way, I kind of see it as like, if my son was going through something and he just came home and I'm like, son, like, are you okay? And he's like, well, I'm gonna just go to my room. I would respect that because I love him so much. But I would know that he's gonna be okay because he shows me that I'm his first resort, that when he is ready, that he knows who to go to, that he does come to me on his own time. And because I know my relationship, my intimate relationship with God, and because I don't go to anything else anymore, because he is the one who he knows and I know that I go to regardless, even if it's not every single day for 10 hours straight, I still find a lot of peace even when I'm not the one. Like typically my devotion is every single morning. I have the same exact routine when it comes to my devotion. It's usually between 5 and 6 or 5:30 and 6:30. And how my devotion every morning, I fill in the gap with God. I use my own personal daily devotional. I study the Bible a certain way, I read, and I have this whole breakdown conversation with God in the morning. And then of course throughout the day. Now, every day doesn't look like that. Of course, there could be a weekend or a couple days where like maybe I missed that, but I don't ever feel disconnected from him. And I don't know if maybe that's still like my new zeal, or it could be because I went so long without him. So with my testimony, my story, I went almost 30 years without him intimately. And so that's plenty. That's a long time. So I think because I went so long without him, to know him and to love him intimately, I just feel like, I mean, there's no separation in that. Even the times that, again, maybe I go some days without talking to him, and even though I know I'm in my head and I'm like, God, trust me, I know if I did sit down and open my Bible and speak with you, I would feel better. I think a lot of times, sometimes we do like to suffer, and sometimes we do like to self-sabotage, but I have the discernment, I have the awareness not to stay in that. So it's not like I'm lost and I'm like, well, let me hit up this guy, or like, let me go. I don't do the old habits. I don't do the old things I would do. But I think a huge reason why that is because that year, I'm telling you, like, I took that dedication very, very seriously. When I tell you I cut the world off, like I cut the world off for like 3 months straight. Like when I had just moved and I was going through the season of sacrifice, I was off the internet. Like nothing. I was off the internet. Nobody could reach me. I even told the few people who were in my life at that time, I'm like, hey, just so you know, like I'm gonna just keep to myself. And they respected that. I didn't go out. Like I didn't do anything. I didn't talk to anybody. Like it was literally just me and God. And I love that so much. And it really makes a difference because you're not tempted. Like you feel so, you have this high, and that's kind of what led to my baptism. But you feel so protected. You feel like you and God are like in this little bubble, the same feeling you get when you're fasting. Like you're just filled with the Holy Spirit. You're so good. And I think because I did that, because I took time, because I took months, because I took a lot of time to truly just be with God, what's happened after that is I just got to know him so well and hear him so well and just be so intimate that when I had to come back into the world, I had to do it on assignment. I didn't want to. Like I was, if it was up to me, it would just be me. That would be anybody. If it was up to us, it would just be us and God cooped up in a bubble. But we have to be that person in the world, right? Like we have to spread the gospel. We have to be that light. Like in order to really show your obedience, you have to be given the opportunity to obey. And you only do that when you are in the world as a Christian, which then leads to like what I ended up doing on social media. Cause I would have never thought I'd be on social media, all Jesus this and God, that never would have thought, but that's naturally what happened. And so, yeah, I think ultimately because of where our relationship is, I know he doesn't take it personal. I don't take it personal because I really do see it as like father, daughter. And there's going to be moments, yes, where I can't fully show up to you, like for you, or like be in your presence how I typically would because of what I have going on. But I know he loves me so much. Like I said, the same way I would give my son that grace, he also knows that I'm going to go to him when I'm ready. It's not going to be like, you know what? Like I said, it's not going to be like, well, this bottle, I'll catch you next weekend. This weekend, I need to dedicate it to the club. Like it's not those things. And so, and yeah, and I think that prep before that, like truly that preparation of being set apart with God only, not no, like it wasn't like, well, I would go out or like I had guys on the side or I was like texting somebody. Like it was genuinely me and God. That I woke up, I worked out, I prayed. Like that was it for months, for like 90 days straight. That's all it was. I was not outside. I was not socializing. I wasn't on the internet. It literally was just me and him. And that made a huge difference.
Yeah. I definitely think I can definitely see that and attest to that as well, that when you have those moments with God for an extended period of time, your obedience, and we know that obedience is better than sacrifice. And I think that we know actually that God really honors obedience over anything, and that's what shows. And so in due time, I know like God is going to bless you beyond like and abundantly. And again, that's why I'm so grateful for you to be sharing your testimony on today, because I am certain that so many people can resonate with your story and resonate with how honest and raw you are about it. I think also being that you recently got saved, and, I think from someone with a background like my own, where you kind of grew up in church all this time, you don't really want people knowing like the things that you are ashamed of or anything like that. And so I love meeting like people that recently got saved, because they'll just tell you everything. Like I was doing this, I was doing that, nah, nah, nah. and they don't have like any like shame about it. And that's how it should be, because when you share your testimony, it's for a reason. We go through the things that we go through and endure to help other people. So thank you so much for this. Honestly, it's been such a blessing. You have dropped so many gems. So I will definitely leave all of your information in the show notes. Make sure that you guys follow Vanity on TikTok. Make sure that you follow her on Instagram, all her social media, because she is truly she's such a blessing, and she's honest. You're really anointed, by the way. Like, you really have a gift of being able to like talk to people. You have a disarming presence about you, and that is really, really beautiful. And I already know God is using you tremendously in this season. And so thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for being kind. And thank you for having me, especially as one of your first guests. And I'm really, really excited to see your transition. Anybody who, again, any sister out here who's being a bold believer online, please keep doing so. Doesn't matter the platform, doesn't matter the followers, doesn't matter the engagement. God honors obedience every single time. And that's the one thing I always hear. It's always like, well, I don't want people to judge me. Like, I've been wanting to tell my testimony, but I don't want to share it. Do it. It's bigger than us. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It's just about you declaring how much you love God. And there's nothing to be ashamed when it comes to that. So we need more girlies. We need more girlies who love Christ on the internet. We need more lights. We need more believers. We need more bold believers. And we need people just being this. And we're not saying not everyone needs to come on here and prophesize about, well, God said this and God said that. That can get very, very overwhelming because everyone thinks they're a prophet these days. But there's something very, very powerful about vulnerability, even if that means you just coming online and just saying like, hey, this is what I'm going through. This is what I've suffered from. And this is what God has delivered me from. There's no niche for that. There's no oversaturation when it comes to that. Anybody can come online and explain how the Bible changed their life, just point blank, period. And so spread the word, pull your Bible out, talk about a scripture that resonates with you and why it did. Why does that scripture speak to you and what are you learning? Everybody has the power of influence. I say this all the time. Everybody has the power of influence. And you were created by the ultimate creator. So you are connected to the most abundant source of creative energy, and you can do all things. You can do everything when it comes to the creative. You can mix your purpose and your profit together. You can go online and still, have that influencer life, but also still do it with integrity and in a way that aligns with God's word. So yeah, we need more people to step up.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. With that being said, my loves, do not forget that I love you and God loves you. And I will speak to you guys in my next podcast episode. Mwah.